here on the embankment of the Ekaterina Canal. It's actually since been renamed, but in 1881 this was called the Ekaterina Canal, and it runs through the heart of St. Petersburg. And this was a fateful spot for the life of Alexander II, because on this Sunday, exactly 135 years ago, Sofia Perovskaya was dedicated to assassinating him. Sofia placed herself right where we can see our fake Sofia. In the spirit of Narodnaya Volya, we have a fake Sofia across the canal in the exact spot where Sofia Perovskaya was standing 135 years ago. She had arranged with her bomb squad to stand in that location and give them the signal as the Tsar was approaching this intersection with Inženjerija Street, which is to our left. Sofia expected the Tsar to come down Inženjerija Street and make a turn onto the embankment right here at this intersection, which we're showing you. So thus, she would stand across the canal from the street so that she could see clearly when his carriage was approaching. The carriage was rather swiftly moving. For security reasons, they kept it moving quickly. He was accompanied by 6 mounted Cossacks at all times. So in order to execute her plan, she had to have it timed very well with her bombers and alert them to expect the rush of the carriage coming through. Her signal to the bombers was to take out a white handkerchief and blow her nose. When she did that, they would know that the Tsar was just about to come around the corner. There we see Sofia giving the signal to the bombers. They know they need to be ready right now to throw their hand grenades, which they were holding, which had just been made the night before for their use. And in fact, the plan went perfectly. Tsar Alexander II of Russia came around the corner and onto this street that you see here, this cobblestone street that he intended to take back to his home at the Winter Palace. He was going to go down this street and at the end of the street make a left turn and go to the Winter Palace. Sofia Perovskaya had been scouting him for months, and she realized he may come this way, and when she saw him stopped at the Mikhailovsky Palace to visit his cousin at around 1:30 in the afternoon, she redeployed her bombers to be here right on this sidewalk that I'm standing on, where they would take action when the Tsar came around the corner onto this street. She stood across the canal and signaled them to be ready when the Tsar was coming around the corner. The Tsar, in fact, came around the corner. The first bomber was Timothy Mikhailov. He didn't throw his bomb. We still don't know exactly why, but he basically seems to have lost his nerve at the last moment and didn't do anything. The next bomber, who was about 50 yards farther this way in my direction, was named Rysakov, Nikolai Rysakov, and he turned as the Tsar's carriage was coming along this pavement. He threw his grenade underneath the wheels of the carriage. It exploded right under the rear axle of the carriage, right along this pavement that I'm showing you right here. When it exploded, it made a big impact. It didn't damage the carriage, and in fact, what happened was the horses pulling the carriage bolted and ran down the pavement for about 100 yards. What had happened was one of the Cossacks' horses who was trailing the carriage was injured very severely and fell over, and the Cossack that was on the horse was killed by the explosion. There was also a 2-year-old boy with his mother here watching the Tsar as he came along this pavement. And that 2-year-old was injured very badly, and he started screaming and crying, and his mother was crying about what had happened. The Tsar, as soon as they could get the horses under control, told his coachman to stop. He wanted to come back and see what had happened at this explosion. He felt once again God had saved him from the hand of the assassins. This was the 6th assassination attempt that he knew of, and he had survived all 6. The Tsar walked back along this pavement, right as we see here, to see what had happened at the site of the explosion. When he came back, he heard the shot that was fired to put down the horse, because the horse had been making an unbearable racket in his death agony. He went to look at the little boy. The boy would die from his wounds. He went to his brother Mikhail, who had come here, and said, "Thank God I am saved." Rysakov had been seized by the police. The Tsar went over and looked at Rysakov and asked, "What are you doing here?" We don't know exactly what Rysakov replied. He was pretending to be someone he wasn't. We know that much. A tradesman, Glazov. The Tsar then turned to look at the blast site. He walked along this very sidewalk that I'm standing on. There was a man leaning against this rail right here, a little farther up. And as the Tsar walked down the sidewalk, the man suddenly took a grenade out from under his coat and threw it right at the feet of the emperor. And the bomb exploded. It fatally wounded the emperor, and it fatally wounded the bomber. He was the first suicide bomber in history, and he succeeded. It was Grenovitzky, Kotik, as Sophia called him, the one that was in the profile of the terrorist. He managed to kill himself, and the wounds that he inflicted on Alexander would prove very soon fatal also.